All right, Kitty. Hi, Kitty. Hello, all of you on YouTube as well, and Marguerite and Twitter, and wherever you're coming from. There's so many of you who are interested in reading this book, and it's wonderful. This is the fifth part of a book called Sunshine by Robin McKinley that is ruining my life because it's just so fucking weird, and I love it. I love books that are unexpected and don't make any sense. Let me back up. It's not that it doesn't make sense. It's that this is also new, and it's such an interesting mythology, so I can't go into it and just be like, oh, I know what's going on. I don't fucking know what's going on. So, Katie, thank you again for supporting me on Patreon. This is your October commission. Let's fucking do this. I'd spent a lot of time sitting by the same inlet with my grandmother. In the 15 years since then, it had changed course and silted up. When we had sat here, you could hear the small pattering stream that had created the inlet, but it was silent now. All I could hear was my own breathing and the splat of my handiwork. There weren't even any birds. I missed this narration. It's written so interestingly. I can't even think of anything else that's like this. It's so cool. The vampire insisted, if you could call it insisting, that he would carry me the last stretch of woods to the first streets of the town. Homogeneity, he reminded me, and blood spore. And I remembered how much faster we went when it was only him walking, and that it was another 12 or 15 miles to the edge of town. I made no protest. He carried me right up to the crumbling cement of the end of the last street, and let my legs drop down gently on the disintegrating curb. I needed him to keep me upright. I put my arm through his and my hand on his wrist. We bumped gently at shoulder and hip. The power ripples sloshed a little as I adjusted to walking on my own feet again, but there was none of the sudden danger of losing my balance than there had been when I discovered the disappearance of my car. In fact, the ripples now seemed to be slightly altering their shape and pattern to help me. The dizziness I'd felt when we walked down the inlet subsided. I had just enough sense left to put the now empty bottle of water in a city litter bin. There's such a finality to that. Like, it's just, oh. I don't ever want to have another journey like those last 15 or so miles across town. I know I keep going on about how tired I was, but that last exhaustion was like a mortal illness, and I felt I could see my death a few hundred feet down the street ahead of us. I'm a pretty good walker, but I'm talking about normal life. Mel and I might hike 15 miles around the lake looking for animals and trying to stay out of the way of super greens. We would take all day at it, have several rest stops and a long halt for lunch, and go home tired and pleased with ourselves. That kind of hike is so different. I just did one of those about a month and a half ago where I did an 11 and a half, nearly 12-mile hike. But you know what? It wasn't a normal hike either because we took a wrong turn and had to hike through a rocky river for 3 miles. That's very painful. But anyway, I get this. We would also be wearing shoes. Yeah, there we go. This was 15 miles on top of all that had gone before, and I'd been running on empty for a long time already. It wasn't only my death I was seeing. I was beginning to hallucinate pretty badly. Lots of people get sort of gray, ferny, cobwebby mirages around the edges of their vision when they get overtired, and I'd had them before occasion when we were short-handed at the coffee house because everyone was sick. But Charlie and me, and we were working 16, 18-hour days, day after day. But this is the first time the ferns and cobwebs had things moving around in them, not to mention the new full-color palette. It was not an enjoyable experience. I did recognize what was going on, and went on peering through the fringes of my private picture show and making out which way we should be going out there in the real world. I knew the layout of my city pretty well, even if I didn't know all its details, and even at this final personal frontier I kept my sense of direction. It was, however, just as well that I was so numb I was barely aware of my poor feet. It was just a good thing that we did it again, and it was a good thing that blood spore was no longer an issue. The sun was by now moving quickly towards setting, which should have been a good thing. The pair of us were going to be less grisly-looking in twilight. No one accosted us. We saw a few people, but either they were already totally lit and away and having much better private screenings than mine, which several of them were animatedly discussing with themselves, and couldn't care less about us, or they took one look and crossed to the other side of whichever street we were on and kept their eyes averted. I thought of asking the vampire if he was doing anything. If vampires can persuade, can they repel too? But it was still daylight, if barely, so this didn't seem likely. Maybe my power ripples were doing something. Maybe that was part of the adjustment they'd made at the edge of town. Maybe we were just lucky. It's nerve-wracking, isn't it? I'm like, where could this go? In the middle of all this, I had a fierce and plausible longing for my grandmother, who could have explained to me what I was doing. I was sure, and how I was doing it. And I started to slip over some kind of definitive last line as I began to feel that the power ripples were soon going to be all there was left of me, that my own personality was weakening, thinning, would blow away like the spidery gray stuff over my eyes. I suddenly, passionately wanted to know what I was doing. As do I. It wasn't the vampire that people were avoiding, though. It was me. I was the one reeling and mumbling and off my head and probably dangerous. I was fading with the daylight. I had stretched myself too far. I got us to the edge of the park at about the moment that twilight turned into darkness, and he picked me up again without so much as a break in his stride, and plunged under the trees into the night that was his element. I could feel the power poles moving faintly through me, even though I no longer needed them for a sun parasol. I thought, mistily, maybe they're trying to keep me alive. Nice of them. He must be trying too. Funny sort of thing for a vampire to do, which I feel like typifies this entire book so far. It is such a bizarre relationship. It was all darkness around us, darkness and trees, and the vampire speeding through it. Feebly, I murmured, I have no idea where we are anymore. I do, he said. I can smell your house. What a fucking creepy-ass sentence. But also comforting, because they're like, oh, she's near her house. Perhaps I fell asleep. That would explain the dreams, that I was flying, that I was dead, that I was a vampire, and that I was standing by the lake with my grandmother, and I had just opened my closed hands. But instead of a flower, or a feather, or a ring, blood welled up and spilled over the edges of my hands, and welled up, as if my hands were a fountain, but a fountain of blood. The sentence structure of this book is so fascinating, because I haven't read a book like this in a very long time, where an author can stack, God, what's the word? Not a sentence, what's part of a sentence called? Anyway, the length of these sentences is so fascinating to me because they still grammatically make sense, but it's also the way that she talks. Like, that's just how her narration is her dialogue. Like, it's all the same. Like, that's... Anyway, the vampire came to a halt. I blinked my eyes open and saw lights twinkling through a few trees and made out the shape of my house. My house. We were on the far side of the garden. I could see the pale lavender of the lilacs by Yolande's sitting room window. She was the sort of old lady who had a sitting room instead of a living room, and the lights on it meant she was still awake, although she usually went to bed as early as a person who gets up at 4 a.m. to go make cinnamon rolls does. I wonder what time it was. The vampire said, "You'll need a key to open your door." He could leave me here. I could ask him to let me down, and then he could go. I could knock on Yolande's door, and once the fright of having a derelict on her doorstep had worn off, after she had recognized me, she would let me in with her spare key. She would be appalled and sympathetic. She would call the coffee house and the doctor and the police. She would run me a hot bath and help me into it, and cluck over my wounds. She would not ask me any questions. She would know I was too tired. She would recognize the signs of shock. She would give me hot, sweet tea, and orange juice, and human warmth, and company, and understanding. I couldn't face her. That's so heartbreaking, to have that sense of sympathy so obvious from someone, and then to just say, no, I can't even do that. Which makes sense. If you've ever been through a traumatic event or moment or period or whatever, one of the hardest things to do is to face another person. It's really difficult to do, especially people you care about. Like, how do you begin to have that conversation? How do you begin to talk about this whole P.S. is a vampire as well? Anyway, now I'm excited and scared. Slowly I moved to pull the knife key out of my bra. The vampire knelt, holding me in his lap. I leaned against him, closed my hands around the small, heavy bit of worked metal. I called on the power of daylight. It came from a lifetime away, but it came. I felt something snap, as if my stomach had parted company with my small intestine, or my liver from my spleen. But when I opened my hands again, there was the key to my front door. The vampire picked me up again gently. What a magical power. He walked around the garden. He went up silently to the porch steps, which I could not have done. The steps all creaked, and the porch itself creaked worse. He drifted, dark and silent as any shadow, to my door, and, still in his arms, I twisted the key in the lock, turned the handle, pushed the door a tiny way open, and whispered, "Yes." He carried me upstairs and through the door at the top, and into my front room and laid me on the sofa. I didn't hear him stand up or move away, but I heard my refrigerator door open and close, and then he was kneeling beside me again. He slid an arm under my head and shoulders and raised me, and stuffed pillows under me until I was half sitting, and said, "Open your mouth." He dribbled a little of the milk into my mouth and made sure I could swallow before he held up the carton steadily for me to drink. He cupped the back of my head with his other hand. What did he think he was, a nurse? Right? I didn't expect this either. I would have asked him, but I was too tired. He got most of the carton of milk down me, eased my head back onto the pile of pillows, and then started feeding me something in small scraps. After the first few, more of my senses came back from nowhere, and I recognized one of my own muffins. What the fuck? Left over at the end of the last day at the coffee house several centuries ago. He was tearing off small bits and feeding them to me slowly so I wouldn't choke. The muffin was still pretty good, but 3 days old to a baker counts as over. I think he may have fed me a second one, still scrap by scrap. Then he held up the carton of milk again till I finished it. Then he pulled the pillows back out, except for one, and laid me down with my head on it. I don't remember anything anymore. What the hell is this book? I woke up, I don't know how many hours later, with the light streaming through the windows. I'd finally reached the sofa where I was lying and touched my face. I couldn't remember where I was. No, I was at home. No, not my old childhood bedroom. This had been my apartment for nearly 7 years. Then why wasn't I in my own bed? Why did I remember sleeping on a foot? No, that had been a dream. No, a nightmare. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. And at the same time, I knew I had overslept and should have been down at the coffee house hours ago, and Charlie would kill me. No, he wouldn't. Why hadn't one of them called to find out where I was? That is actually... Where is everyone? Why are people waiting at your house? Where? No! No! What's happening? I tried to sit up and nearly screamed. Every muscle in my body seemed to have seized up. I didn't think there was a single nerve in that hadn't shouted no when I moved. I ached all over, inside and out, and furthermore I felt as if all my insides, the organs, the organ systems, all that stuff you studied in biology class and promptly forgot again, all those murky, semi-known bits and pieces no longer had the same relationship to each other than they had before silly sort of thing to feel. I must be delirious. My mind would keep drifting back. But don't think about it. But how was I to make sense of where I was, at home, sleeping on the sofa in broad daylight, and so sore I couldn't move? If all that was a nightmare, what had happened to me? Where is the vampire? Where is the vampire? I tried to sit up again and eventually succeeded. There was a blanket laid over me, and it fell off and onto the floor. I was wearing a filthy, stained, dark cranberry red dress that clung around me at the top and swirled out into yards and yards of hem at my ankles. I was barefoot. My feet were in shreds, scratched and abraded and bruised and swollen. I had mud all over me and now all over the sofa and the floor as well, and a long, curved, ugly slash across my breast that had obviously bled and then clotted. Its edges ground against each other and throbbed when I tried to move. My lower lip was split, and that side of my face felt puffy. Sorry, not... I either said puppy or fuppy, I don't even know. Words sometimes escape me. Hold on a second. I started to shiver uncontrollably. What's going to happen when a memory comes back? Painfully, I picked up the blanket again and wrapped it around me and made my way into the bathroom by feeling along the walls. Where the fuck is the vampire? I turned the hot water on in the bath. The hot water was going to hurt, but it was going to be worth it. I poured in about 4 times as much bubble bath as I usually use and breathed the sweet lily-of-the-valley scented steam. Even my lungs hurt. My breathing seemed funny. There was something about the way I breathed that was different from... While I waited for the bath to fill, I groped my way into the kitchen. I ate an apple because that was the first thing I saw. There was an empty carton of milk on the counter by the sink. I didn't think about this. I ate another apple. Then I ate a pear. I moved into the light pouring through the kitchen window and let it soak into me while I stood staring out at the garden. In the welcoming, restorative sunlight, trying to keep my mind from thinking anything at all, I felt the tiny, laborious stirring of a sense of well-being, the convalescence rejoicing at the first hint of a possible return to health, which makes sense given what she's been through. I would have a bath, and then I would call the coffee house. I didn't have to tell anyone anything. I could be too traumatized. I could have forgotten everything. I had forgotten everything. I was forgetting everything right now. My feet and my face and the gash on my breast would stop anyone from pressing me too hard to remember something so obviously terrible. Yolande must be out, otherwise she would have heard the bathwater running and have come upstairs to find out if I was all right. She would have known that I've been missing, that on a normal day I would have been at the coffee house hours ago, not up here running bathwater. That I've been missing, I didn't have to remember or think about anything. I could just stand here and let the sun heal me. I was relieved that Yolande wasn't here asking questions, being appalled and sickened, reminding me by her distress. I was relieved that no one would disturb me till I had finished forgetting. What a haunting fucking sentence. The bath should be full by now. Now that the sunlight had begun to do its work, I wanted to be clean. I might have to use every bar of soap I had and bring the scouring pads in from the kitchen. I was going to burn this dress, wherever it came from. It was nothing I'd ever have chosen. I couldn't imagine why I was wearing it. When I was completely clean again and wearing my own clothes, I would call the coffee house, tell them I was home again. Home and safe. Safe. As I turned away from the window, a square of white lying on the kitchen table caught my eye. It was my notepad, which usually lived beside the phone. On it was written, "Goodbye, my sunshine, Constantine." So he just... Oh, part 2. He just left? What the fuck? It might not have been too bad afterward, except for 2 things. The nightmares, and the fact that the cut on my breast wouldn't heal. That's nonsense, of course. If I'd been able to face being honest, there was no way it wasn't going to be bad. I suppose I didn't realize how rough I was that first morning. After I had one bath, I had another. Bless landladies with absurdly huge water heaters. I washed my hair 3 times during that first bath and twice during the second. Hot water and soap and shampoo hurt like blazes, but it was a wonderful, human, normal, this world sort of hurt. In drastic contrast to what she's been through. Holy shit. Getting dressed wasn't too difficult because my wardrobe specializes in soft, well-worn, and comfortable. But finding shoes and socks that didn't feel like they were scarifying my poor feet with steel wool was hard. Then I drank a pot of very strong tea, and on the caffeine buzz, I almost half convinced myself that I felt almost half normal. And if I felt half normal, I must look half normal. Wrong. At the last minute, I didn't burn the dress. I put it in the sink with some hand wash stuff and then hung it on a corner with a bowl under it to drip dry. It leaked thin, bloody-looking water, and this made me so queasy I almost screwed it up to be burned anyway. But I still didn't. I did burn the underwear I'd worn. It was like I had to burn something. I took it out, nearly on tiptoe, clinging to the shadows, as if I was doing something illicit I might be caught at, and stuffed it into the ashes and wood chips on Yolande's garden bonfire heap. My hand shook when I struck the match, but that might have been the caffeine. It burned surprisingly well for a few scraps of cloth, as if my eagerness to see something go up in smoke was itself inflammatory. I stuck that note in a drawer so I didn't have to see or think about it, or about who had written it. How is she... Where's the story going to go? The house key that had been a jackknife lay on top of a pile of books next to the sofa. It had been one of the first things I'd seen when I'd managed to lever myself upright. I'd done all this other stuff. Wash, rewash, inject caffeine, set fire to things, while not deciding what to do about it. I need you to know that wash, rewash, inject caffeine, set fire to things sounds like the daily routine of Shauna McGuire. Okay. It totally does. It wasn't that, and it was a house key that had been a pocket knife, was supposed to be a pocket knife, and I missed my knife. I wanted it back. And there was the only one way to get it back, which would remind me of all the stuff I was working on forgetting. I'd returned to the world where I made cinnamon rolls, and was my mother's, not my father's, daughter, and I wanted to stay there. Oh, that's so heartbreaking. I had opened all the windows and the door to the balcony. I wanted as much fresh air as I could get. I wanted no faintest reminding scent here of anything that might come back with me last night. The blanket that had covered me was soaking in the tub. I had brushed the sofa within an inch of its life, with a whisk broom that would take off the hide off an armadillo. The cushion I had my head on had spot remover troweled over it, and was waiting to dry. I stood on the balcony, closed my eyes, and let the sun and the soft breeze move over me, through me. I felt, the leaves of my trees stir and rustle. My grandmother had taught me that if you handle magic, you have to clean up after yourself. Just like washing or burning your clothes or troweling spot remover on a sofa cushion. I went back indoors to pick up the house key that shouldn't be left a house key. I knelt on the floor inside the balcony door, in the sunlight, near the open door to the smell, or near enough to the open door to smell the breeze from the garden. It was so easy this time. I felt the change, felt the key slip from keenness to knifeness. It was like kneading dough, feeling the thing become what you want it to be under your hands, feeling it responding to you, feeling it transform itself as a result of your effort, your power, your knowledge. I didn't like it being easy. I liked the dough metaphor. That was really cool, especially given what she does. But I liked having my knife back. It lay in my hand, looking like it always had. Welcome back, Fred, I murmured, and refused to feel silly for talking to a jackknife. Maybe I was talking to myself, too. Welcome back. Stop breaking my heart! Then I put it in my pocket and went to look for incense. I never used incense in my life as a coffeehouse baker. I much prefer the smell of fresh bread. Amen. But it was one of those things that people who need to give you something but haven't a clue who you are give you. My Aunt Edna, my mother's other sister, every year at one solstice or another, gives me a packet of the current hot fashion in incense. So there's probably some lurking in the back of a cupboard somewhere. There was. I lit a wand of World Harmonics jasmine and put it in a glass and said the words my grandmother had taught me. I didn't have to remember them. They were right there, like my tree. Then I called the coffee house to tell them I was back, and all hell broke loose. Here we go. This is what I've been waiting for, especially after Mom belted out to my apartment when I explained I didn't have a car anymore to pick me up and got her first look at me. I won't go into a lot about that. It was not one of our finest mother-daughter moments. Oh, shit. I did go to the doctor because everybody said I had to. The doctor said there wasn't much wrong with me but minor dehydration and exhaustion. Gave me a tetanus shot and some cream to put on both my feet and my breast. He asked me how I got the cut on my breast because, as he put it, in that portentously unruffled and infuriating way of doctors, it looks a bit nasty. Thank you for that, but I hadn't decided how much I was going to tell anyone, and having had everyone who had seen me so far freaking out, except the doctor who was doing portentously unruffled like a kick to the head, wasn't helping. So I said I didn't remember. He said, I put some stitches in it so it would heal neatly, muttered something about post-traumatic shock syndrome, offered me a reference to someone who could talk to me about remembering and not remembering, and sent me away. Mel had brought me. He borrowed Charlie's car so I didn't have to ride pillion on a motorcycle. I had known Mel could drive a car. He drove his motorcycles in all weather, including heavy snow and thunderstorms. And he brought me back to the coffee house. The thought of going back to my apartment was only fleetingly tempting. I wanted to return to my life. And my life, for better or worse, was in the coffee house bakery. Also, I wanted to get the freaking out over with so that I didn't have to keep coming back to it. And I knew Mom wasn't through with it, or wasn't through yet. Charlie nearly had to tie her up to let Mel take me to the doctor. Mom is a bit prone to overreacting, but Mel, when he first saw me, turned haggard, and his eyes seemed to go about 1,000,000 miles deep, and I suddenly felt I knew what he was going to look like when he was 90. And he didn't say anything at all, which was probably worse than the noise everyone else was making. This is unreal. Mom tried to insist that I stay at the house, move back in with her and Charlie and my brothers. I said that I would do nothing of the kind. I meant it, but I was a little hindered by the fact that I no longer had a car. They never did find my car. I liked that car. That afternoon, after talking to the doctor and about 47 kinds of cop, Mom and I had a big shouting match that I didn't have the strength for. And I burst into tears and said that I would walk home if I had to. And then Mom started weeping too, and it was all pretty ghastly. Charlie at this point reminded Mom in a reasonable facsimile of his normal voice. He kept starting to pat my shoulder and then stopping because I told him, truthfully, that I was sore all over. That there was no longer a bedroom for me. The spare bedroom and den had disappeared when Charlie knocked all the downstairs walls out, and Kenny had moved out of the boys' bedroom into my old room upstairs. This only made Mom cry harder. But what's next? Oh. Then Mel, who had been left more or less single-handed to run the coffee house while the drama went on in the office, began calling the staff who had crammed into the office door to watch and make a kind of Greek chorus of horror, and one by one heaving them physically toward what they ought to be doing, like minding the customers, before they all came back to see what was going on, which, given Charlie's kind of customers, they would be quite capable of. When he'd forged his way through to me, he handed Charlie the spatula he was still holding in his other hand, like the relay runner handing on the torch of Thermopylae, and said, "Can you hold the kitchen a minute?" and hustled me off to the bakery. My bakery. Just standing in my own domain again, where I was queen of the cinnamon roll, the bran muffin, the orange date tea bread, the caramel cataclysm, and the Rocky Road avalanche made me feel better, and I want all of those things. I had to cancel the immediate impulse to put on a clean apron and check my floor supply. It was far too clean in here for a Thursday. Nobody's been in here while you've been gone. We gave Polly the time off. Polly was my new apprentice. I had stopped crying for the moment, but this made my aching eyes fill up again. Oh, hey, we didn't know what to do. No Carthaginian idea. Mel sounded grim, but steadily calm. Excuse me, let me get some water. For the first time, I had some glimpse of what it must have been like for everybody here when I disappeared. I wasn't the disappearing kind. They would have feared the worst. It was the right response, and given what could have happened, I probably looked a lot worse than I was, so everybody was taking one look at me and fitting this vision against what their dreams had been turning out the last 2 days. Sweetheart, I stiffened. Hey, Sheer. This is me, okay? I saw you not taking the name the doctor wanted to give you about someone to talk to. You don't have to talk to me unless you want to, or anyone else, including Charlie and your mom. But if you tell me what you do want, I'll make you. Let me do this again. Sometimes I can't do words. But if you tell me what you do want, I'll help you make it happen. If you'll let me. Thanks to all the gods and angels for Mel. I couldn't explain that while yes, I'd always been a bit solitary, a bit disinclined to talk about what mattered to me, but what I was thinking about, it was crucial that I be able to go home. To my home, my private space, now, alone, where I didn't have to lie. I hadn't forgotten nearly as much as I was pretending I had. I mean, I suspected as much, but oh, God. Mind you, I'd forgotten a lot. Post-traumatic what's-its, like the doctor said. The cops mentioned post-traumatic what's-it, too. I had to check in with the cops because Mom and Charlie had, of course, reported me missing. I said that I'd driven out to the lake Monday night and didn't remember anything after that. No, I didn't remember where I'd been. No, I didn't remember how I'd got home 2 days later. No, I didn't remember why I was so beat up. Mel went with me for that, too, even though he was pretty allergic to cops. Charlie, trying to make a joke, said that he hadn't done so much cooking for years, and did I want Mel to take me anywhere else? Florida? The Catskills? And the cops shrink they made me talk to had to go into it again. The gist is that you only remember what you can bear to remember. If you're lucky, as you get stronger, you can bear to remember a little more, and eventually you get around to remembering all of it. By remembering it, then it can't mess up your life. That's the theory. That lot they know. I didn't say vampires to anyone, and I sure remembered that much. If I'd said it, Soph wouldn't have just talked to me, they'd have kept me. People don't escape from vampires. I wasn't going to think about how I'd escape from vampires, let alone tell Soph about it, so let's just pretend I hadn't escaped from vampires. Post-traumatic shock phooey. Seemed to me the trauma was trotting right along with me, like a dog on a leash with its owner. I was the dog. It's 90 pages in, and this book just keeps punching me in the heart. I had to talk to Soph because anything mysterious might be about the others, and Soph were the other police. But I told them I didn't remember anything too. By the time I talked to Soph, I was getting good at saying I didn't remember. I could look them in the eye and K it like I meant it. They were cleverer about questioning me. They asked me stuff like what the lake had looked like that night, where exactly I had sat on the porch of the cabin. They weren't trying to trick me. They were trying to help me remember, possibly to our mutual benefit, trying to help me find a way into remembering. I pretended there was no door, or if there was one, it had 6 locks and 4 bolts and a steel bar, and it had been bricked over years ago. It was easier, saying I didn't remember. I walled it all out, including everybody's insistent, well-meaning concern. It turned out to be easy, a little too easy, to burst into tears if anyone tried to go on asking me questions. Some people are mean drunks. I'm a mean weeper. The first day started passing. It became the first week. The bruises were fading and the scratches skinned over, and I began to look less like hell on earth. On the second Monday movies night at the Sedans after my return, people began to make eye contact with me again without looking like it was costing them. Wow, that is a great sentence. I mean, sad, but that's a great sentence. And I was making cinnamon rolls and bread, all like a normal, crazed coffeehouse baker again, thus deflecting poor Polly's imminent nervous breakdown. He was going to be good, but he was still new and slow from lack of experience, eager to gain that experience. He'd been several weeks going through the ringer, or the 5-speed industrial strength mixer with me, and then I disappeared, and everybody was barking at him because his presence reminded them that I wasn't there, and sending him home. I wanted to cheer him up, so I let him in on the secret of bitter chocolate death, and he made it beautifully first time. This bucked him up so much he started humming while he worked. It was bad enough having someone in the bakery with me some of the time so I could teach him what to do and keep an eye on him while he did it. Humming was pushing it. Was it absolutely necessary to have a cheerful apprentice? Charlie found someone who could loan me a car till I could replace the one they never found, and then found another one when the first one had to go back. The insurance took forever to cough up, but it did at last. Their agent wanted to complain about my not remembering exactly what had happened, but he was promptly inundated by people from Charlie's, staff and regulars, offering to be character references. The doctor I'd seen and the cop shrink I'd seen said I was genuine, and then Mom started writing letters. Oh no, it's over when that happens. The company might have held out against the rest, but no one resists Mom for long when she starts one of her letter-writing campaigns. Mine was my mother visiting in principal's office. That was, oh no, it's over. During borrowed car gaps, Mel gave me a lift on his motorcycle of the week. Favors don't get much more serious than giving someone a ride at 4 a.m. And then I started using Kenny's bicycle. Kenny was at an age when bicycles are deeply uncool, and he didn't miss it. Downtown where the coffee house is a drag on a bike. Cars and buses first run you off the road and then leave you asphyxiating in their wake, but it's nice out near your lawns, and bicycling helped make me tired enough to sleep through the nights. Well, that's sad. Also, that's what cycling in LA was like when I first started doing it 8 years ago. Exactly like that. Apparently it's better. I don't know, I don't have a bicycle right now. Let's see. Although it meant getting up at 3:30 to get in time to make cinnamon rolls, which is ridiculous. Also, Mom was having kittens about my riding a bike after dark, or before sunup. She was perhaps not entirely wrong about this, even if she didn't know why. And even though there was no record of anyone ever being snatched off a bike in New Arcadia, there was no record of suckers at the lake either. So I did buy another car. The Wreck. It ran. I bought it from a friend of Mel's who liked tinkering with cars the way Mel liked tinkering with motorcycles, and the friend guaranteed it would run just so long as I didn't want anything fancy, like a third gear that was there all the time or top speed of over 40. It suited me fine. I didn't feel like getting attached to another car, and the sporadic absence of third gear was an interesting diversion. The doctor took the stitches out of my breast. My feet healed. Life started to look superficially normal again. Superficially. So we know it's not normal. Something has to come of this. I took a deep breath and asked Polly how he'd like to get up at 4 in the morning once a week to make cinnamon rolls. He was delighted. Another head case joins the inner cadre of Charlie's. He chose Thursday, and now at 2 mornings a week I didn't have to get up before sunrise. Theoretically. I didn't tell him what if he was paying attention. He already knew that the coffeehouse schedule was a thing that happened on paper never quite worked out that way, but letting him think he got to choose should be good for morale. His morale. And even an unpredictable series of 4s in the morning I didn't have to get up at was going to be good for my morale. Emil and I started to junk. Let me do that again. Emil and I started going to junk and old book fairs again. When I went hiking with Mel, we didn't go out to the lake. Not being able to decide what to tell anyone about anything had become the habit of not telling anybody anything. The funny thing was that the nearest I came to telling anyone was Yolande. There was something about the way she put me in a chair and made pots of tea and sat with me and talked about the weather or the latest civic scandal or some book we had both read, and not only didn't ask me anything, but didn't appear to be suppressing the desire to ask me anything either. Well, to me, that sounds like it's a sense of comfort. Like she's so comfortable with her because she doesn't put on this pretense of needing to know anything. Anyway, the second nearest I came was one night with Mel. When I woke up out of one of the nightmares and was out of bed and across the room before I had registered that the body I had been in bed with, had my head on the chest of, had a heartbeat. Mel didn't say anything stupid. He sat up slowly and turned the light on slowly and made me a cup of tea slowly. By that time, I was no longer twitching away from every shadow, but I was too pumped with sick adrenaline to sleep. Mel took me downstairs and put a paintbrush in my hand. Every now and then, he got talked into doing a custom job on one of the bikes he'd rescued. I had laid down primer and first coats for him a few times and buffed finishes, but that's all. That night, he had me filling in the outline of tiny green oak leaves. When I had to stop and get ready to report for cinnamon roll duty, I felt almost normal again. No, not normal. Something else. I felt as if I had accidentally re-entered my grandmother's world, where I didn't want to go. But if that is where I had been, it had done me good. I wondered who the bike was for, why they wanted an oak tree. Mel would never do the standard screaming demon, thunderbolt superhero sort of thing, all jaw and biceps and skaggy-looking flame. And one of the few little dumb things that would ruffle the calm of his was the sight of a bike decorated with a flying sorcerer. But a tree was, a funny symbol for something with wheels that was built to go lickety-split. Or look at it another way. The main symbolism around trees is about their incorruptibility, right? Their immunity to all dark magic. This is not something you expect your average biker to be deeply interested in. Fuck. This is so good. Kitty, it's so good. I've never read anything like this. This is really good. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you who've been enjoying this as well. It's awesome. I am excited to read more of it. Thank you.